Thank you everyone for joining us today. It is 1:02 p.m. Central Time, so we are going to get started. First off, I want to thank you all for attending the current state of managing hospital oncology data from today's challenges to tomorrow's possibilities webinar. In just a moment, I'm going to pass it over to Q-Centrix CEO Milton Silva-Craig and two oncology leaders, Karen Schmidt, Vice President of Oncology, and Jennifer Zahn, Senior Director of Oncology Data Services, for a discussion on navigating the changing oncology landscape and how clinical data plays a role in advancing the market and improving patient care. My name is Christina, and I'm a member of our people team here at Q-Centrix, and I will be your host today. I'm going to quickly review a few housekeeping items, and then I'll pass it over to Milton, Karen, and Jen. First and foremost, all participants have been muted to maintain the quality of today's discussion. If you have a question for today's presenters, please submit them to the Q&A button located in your participant controls at the bottom of the screen. If we do not get to your question during the live webinar time, we will follow up with you via email afterwards. If you'd like to refer to this webinar or would like to share a discussion with a colleague, this webinar is being recorded and will be shared via email within the next week. And finally, once our webinar concludes, a link to fill out a quick post-webinar survey will appear in your browser and in the chat box, and we would greatly appreciate your participation. And that is it on housekeeping. So without further ado, Milton, you may take it away.
Thank you, Christina. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, The Current State of Managing Hospital Oncology Data from Today's Challenges to Tomorrow's Possibilities. I'm excited to host today's discussion where we will be joined by two passionate experts in the field of oncology clinical data who will help us cover a host of essential topics in this vitally important and dynamic field, with our end goal of providing you better insights, thoughts, and perspectives as you contemplate your own oncology clinical data strategies. As Christina said, my name is Milton. I've been in my role as CEO at Q-Centrix for the past 8.5 years. And I've been involved in the field of healthcare IT and data for nearly 30 years. Joining us today in the audience are 150 participants across a range of hospital and health systems. And a segment of you are interested in learning more about oncology clinical data management as a career opportunity, while more than 60% of you are interested in the oncology clinical data management solutions and to better understand the market dynamics that we're experiencing today. So welcome all of you and thank you for joining. As a student of the healthcare market, I would share that with you that this is one of the most exciting times in my history as we now begin to realize and leverage the tremendous insights and value that come from data. And today we'll talk about oncology data, but data that will help drive improved care more broadly to patient populations and more specifically to individualized care, personalized medicine. A brief background on Q-Centrix. We are the largest provider of clinical data management solutions to hospitals in the US. We partner with more than 1,200 hospitals, helping them curate, manage, report, and analyze data across a broad spectrum of clinical domains, including oncology, cardiovascular, orthopedics, trauma, and more. And we do that for a host of value-producing purposes. And that includes improved patient care and outcomes, participation in professional registries, state and national reporting, research, value-based care and incentive-driven reimbursement programs, and more. Our primary offering is something we refer to as an enterprise clinical data management platform. You might see ECDM, and that consists of our more than 1,000 clinical experts, our full cloud-based software offering, including clinical data capture and submission technology, our analytics and reporting insights, and then the network knowledge that we gain from our hospital partners. And with respect to oncology, we service more than 200 hospitals today, and we have a team of more than 250 certified tumor registrars and growing. And if you care to learn more about these solutions, don't hesitate to reach out after our discussion. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce you to two of our clinical experts. Karen Schmidt, who's our Vice President of Oncology, and Jennifer Zahn, who's our Senior Director of Oncology Data Services. Both are CTRs and are tremendously knowledgeable and passionate about their profession, oncology care, and data. And since this will be a virtual fireside chat, we'll use the first question to allow Karen and Jen to introduce themselves. So Karen and Jen, can you both share a brief overview of your backgrounds and specifically what excites you and drives your passion for this field?
Yes, thanks, Milton. First, I'd like to thank you for bringing Jen and I together to highlight the significant investments Q-Centrix is making in the oncology clinical data space. As for me, I've been in this industry for approximately 20 years and a CTR for 10 of those years. My unique journey to become involved in this profession was to start out recruiting. And 20 years ago, I worked for a small organization that asked me to recruit a few CTRs. Before I could even begin doing this, I needed to understand what a CTR did and what those credentials actually stood for. Fast forward 20 years, and not only do I know what they do, but I'm very passionate about the data we collect. Every CTR has a story on how they were introduced into this profession. But we all stay in this profession because we know we can make a difference, one patient's story at a time. In my position today, I don't tell many patient stories any longer, but as a cancer survivor myself, the power of the information we collect on a daily basis has touched me personally. I feel blessed to be able to lead the group of CTRs into the future with the mission of continuing to make our clinical data have purpose.
Thank you both. I found my way to this industry by accident after deciding the nursing field I was pursuing wasn't right for me. In cancer registry, I found purpose in data and a way to make a difference outside of providing direct patient care. I've spent the last 20 years as a CTR, working in differing capacities from an abstractor in a hospital to a traveling CTR consultant to leading a large team of CTRs collecting this meaningful data for partners across the country. Like Karen, I'm passionate about the fact that in this profession, we have the privilege of telling patient stories. And by providing that data, play a critical role in providing and developing better diagnostic tools, treatments, and ultimately outcomes for those impacted by cancer.
Okay, thank you, Jen and Karen. I know both of you, as I've had the privilege of working with you, and still get motivated hearing about your personal stories. So thank you for sharing. As noted previously, we have a diverse audience of participants, both those that are interested on a personal level in pursuing this field as a professional endeavor, and those professionals that are already working in this field, looking at how to better manage the dynamics of our industry. And those dynamics that we're currently dealing with are creating the supply chain issue. On one hand, we have a supply issue, a general shortage of clinical resources driven by retiring nurses, clinicians leaving the hospital market, and more specifically, just a general lack of CTRs. On a parenthetical note, Common Spirit, which is a large not-for-profit health system, they recently announced that they are forming an intercompany staffing company and a nursing residency program to bolster its workforce and manage this increasingly challenging clinical labor scarcity. Okay, so that's the supply side. On the demand side, we have increasing dynamics in demand, including a Commission on Cancer requiring more real-time reporting. And these dynamics have led to opportunities, both for those that are interested in pursuing this field, and then challenges, those hospitals with large backlogs of oncology data needing to be curated and processed for reporting purposes. So a question for both of our experts. How are you tackling these dynamics in the industry today?
So as highly trained oncology data professionals, CTRs are critical to ensuring the data collected and utilized by hospitals and other entities is standardized and of the highest quality. These data are used in a growing number of ways, from required state and federal reporting to quality of care initiatives to planning for new services, etc. Despite the importance of the role these experts play, there are only about 6,000 CTRs across the country, which is a relatively small number compared to the overall need. In addition, over the last several years, a growing number of CTRs are transitioning into retirement, leaving a significant void. This knowledge and skill gap has created an increased burden and considerable challenge for those hospital partners dependent on the data.
Jen, you're absolutely right. And this is where we can help. Even our profession has been affected by the Great Resignation and, as you mentioned, the Great Retirement. Our industry is doing a nice job supporting education programs across the country to introduce new people to this profession. This has kept the overall number of certified professionals right around 6,000. However, we are losing experience in this profession. Experience in our profession equates to quality data collected. This is critical because our high fidelity data drives how patients are treated. If the data is not collected appropriately, then patients' outcomes could change. Personally, when I received the diagnosis of ovarian cancer a little over 3 years ago, the data helped me understand my prognosis and my treatment options. I felt confident in my treatment decisions, knowing they were based on quality data collected by these professionals. Ensuring data quality is always at the forefront of our minds, and this means leaders like us need to encourage people just starting out in this profession. Our passion has driven us to create an educational platform for these new generation of CTRs. The extensive educational environment we call Q-Centrix Institute, or QCI for short, allows both our seasoned registrars the opportunity to pay it forward, but also gives us the opportunity to train new team members entering this field so they can gain experience without risking the quality of the data. The benefit for working for an organization like ours is that no matter where you are in this professional journey, we have a spot for you. As we mentioned, resources in this field are very scarce. And by focusing on closing the experience gap in the industry, we are creating an environment that allows everyone the opportunity to learn, network with other CTRs, and grow in their profession. Much like Common Spirit Initiative, QCI allows us to create this learning environment at scale to support our partners in their quest to utilize this rich data set for decision making.
Thanks, Karen. I really love that Q-Centrix is investing and strengthening our industry in this way. Strong educational, mentoring, and quality programs are key in supporting the growth and development of new professionals so they can quickly develop the high level of expertise needed. Additionally, the oncology field is evolving at a faster pace all the time, requiring the industry as a whole to be committed to continuous learning and ongoing education in order to keep pace with these advancements in treatments, diagnosis, and outcomes.
Great point, Jen. These advancements are resulting in an increased number of survivors in the US. Currently, there are 18+ million survivors, and the projection for 2032 is that we will be at 22.5 million survivors, which is an increase of 24%. The ability to monitor these survival statistics is a direct result of the work our team does.
Okay, so just reflecting on your comments for a moment, one might think that, because of the dynamics and the various challenges, maybe it's not an ideal time to enter the oncology data field. What are your thoughts? Why or why not?
So my personal opinion is that this is a very exciting time in oncology. With more information being generated from a multitude of different sources, the desire and demand to understand and make use of it is growing exponentially. In addition to traditional use cases, there's an increased focus on other opportunities, such as informing clinical trials, supporting the move to precision and personalized medicine, use for strategic planning, etc. All of these endeavors require both quality data capture and the ability to analyze and leverage the actionable information for decision-making. Strong clinical expertise paired with the right technology are essential to successfully unlocking these insights.
Okay, so it sounds like it's actually a great time to enter the field, which is good to know. Obviously, you're both are passionate about the quality of the data, and you've been instrumental in leading the charge and leveraging this data with our hospital partners. Maybe, can you expand on how hospitals can utilize this data to make more informed decisions, not only about their cancer programs, but also how does technology play a role in all of this, including our recently introduced oncology platform at Q-Centrix?
Yeah, great point, Milton. And as you well know, data capture is the foundation of what we do, but the real power of this data capture is how we utilize it once it's captured. We collect this information to support accreditation, state reporting requirements, but ensuring that hospitals have confidence in this data is our real mission. The cancer registry dataset is unique because it captures patients' journey with cancer, whether it's at the facility or outside of their facility. And CTRs are required to capture all of the diagnostics, any prognostic indicators, the treatment plans, and long-term follow-up for those patients if they've been seen at that reporting facility. The unique part of this story is that we capture information about these patients outside of the reporting facility. And every day across the country, the CTRs are telling those patients' story in a very detailed way. And Q-Centrix has developed this unique platform that not only allows for data capture, curation, and submission, but now provides the hospital administrators awareness into their unique patient population. This platform allows us to aggregate individual patient stories into powerful insights about their cancer program.
Maybe, Karen, if you could just provide a few specific examples.
Sure, I'd love to. As you're well aware, all of you, today's hospitals are required to do more with less. And this has created the need to focus our quality improvements and our goals on areas that are going to be most impactful and most of the time deal with patient care delivery. The best way to do this is through data-driven decisions and prioritizing projects. In one scenario, a partner hospital was discussing with Cancer Committee the idea of putting a significant investment into their breast cancer program. This on the surface seems like a great idea, but after reviewing the data from the cancer registry, they determined that their breast program was performing well in the marketplace. However, after looking at the data, they discovered they weren't capturing enough of the market share in their colon cancer population. And in fact, many of the colon cancer patients were being seen by the hospital in a late stage. And prognosis is never good when a cancer patient shows up in a late stage. So they took this information and created a campaign in the community to educate the population about the importance of screening colonoscopies. In the coming months and years, they saw an increase in their patient volumes and improvement in early stage diagnosis. And of course, that resulted in better outcomes for those patients.
As I reflect on that story, Karen, it's interesting how clinical data can actually provide a lot of operational and market insights. And maybe our audience members didn't appreciate clinical data having that sort of capability, but maybe just another example to share.
Absolutely. And you're absolutely right. For so many of our facilities that we partner with, they're collecting this information for other purposes. And what we really want them to understand is that it can be used for multiple purposes. And this next scenario tells that very story. So we worked with a facility to understand, they really wanted to understand why their patient volumes were declining. And so as we started to gather the information and give them a better understanding as to what was happening in their cancer program, they were wondering why volumes were going down. They hadn't lost a physician. Diagnosis in their catchment area was not decreasing at all. So what could it be? They really wanted to understand it. By providing them the information that we collect in the cancer registry, we were able to show that one of their surgeons on staff was taking his patients to another facility because he was uncomfortable with the scheduling process. This in turn reduced the number of referrals that he made to medical oncology and radiation oncology. So by discovering the root cause of the decline, it uncovered a process improvement opportunity for the hospital administrators to tackle. They were able to implement an intervention and volume started to grow again. And it's really interesting to me that we can take data that's been collected for one purpose to look at survival and how treatment is being utilized, but really turn it into a different environment and use it for administrative purposes. These two success stories that we've had with our partners are just two. We have many other success stories that we would love to share. But for me personally, having the ability to have one platform that focuses on the main components required to successfully leverage this data that's captured is key to unlocking the power of the data. Our Q-Centrix platform is a comprehensive system created with the CTRs in mind, the state registries, accreditation organizations, and administration. And I'm thrilled to be a part of this platform and to be able to continue to provide a valuable information to our partners. Our unique offering to the market is able to provide enterprise-wide analytics, which include oncology market share reporting, patient migration analysis, and clinical trial feasibility data. These three components can immediately show a partner return on investment, and it's above and beyond the cost of your cancer registry. No longer will hospital administrators need to defend the cancer registry cost. They'll be able to say the cost of the registry has paid for itself multiple times based on the information that we have at our fingertips. And it's very exciting times in oncology.
Indeed it is. And thank you for sharing those examples. You know, I have the fortune of talking to a lot of customers, and I often talk about this idea of clinical data value. And I use a slide to talk about this concept called the clinical data value chain, and how clinical data can be utilized, just like you described, Karen, in multiple purposes. So on the left-hand side, you see kind of on the spectrum, reporting, using data for reporting. Hospitals may be obligated to report that data to certain state or federal authorities. To the right of it is utilizing clinical data for financial incentive programs. You demonstrate your performance through quality metrics, leveraging clinical data, and then you're financially incented based on your performance. Kind of moving up the value chain to the next is to improve care, evidence-based care. What do I learn from the data that suggests a different path of treatment? And I think those three examples pretty evident to most of our participants. What may be less known, however, is how is clinical data being utilized in research or in what we refer to as real-world data or real-world evidence. And a lot of those advances in the use of data was driven in large part by the federal government's passing of what's referred to as the 21st Century Cures Act, which at a really high level called for utilizing retrospective clinical data in drug discovery. And so maybe both of you could share how clinical data is being utilized outside of the walls of hospital care. And part two of that question, how can hospitals participate in those opportunities?
Absolutely. And I think this is a really important component that's been happening in oncology for the past several years. And the first organization that I'm going to talk about is CMS, and they've been really working on an oncology care model to better understand how they can leverage data to support payment models for medical oncologists. This program was aimed to provide higher quality, more coordinated care at the same or lower cost to Medicare. And secondly, the American Society for Clinical Oncologists, or ASCO, created a program called COPI, or Quality Oncology Practice Initiatives. This is a certification program that requires data capture to support physician documentation on toxicity, safety, treatment plan adherence, and many other elements to ensure patients are being treated appropriately. Hospitals are using these measures to engage the physician population and create incentive models based on this data capture. They're also leveraging this certification to support patients becoming consumers of their healthcare services. Jen, maybe you can talk a little bit about the 21st Century Cures Act and other oncology initiatives.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So the 21st Century Cures Act was designed to help to accelerate development of new medical products and bring new innovations and advances to patients faster and more efficiently. Part of this legislation allows for the incorporation of real-world evidence and clinical outcomes assessment into clinical trial design, speeding the development and review of therapies, medical products, and devices. There are lots of people currently working in this space to drive innovation in oncology. One example our team has been involved with is a network of entities who've come together to partner in data exchange and cancer research collaboration. Through a shared protocol, they're collectively diving more deeply into the stories of their patients, curating more than 600 oncology-related molecular and clinical data elements, which are then updated on a regular basis. This information creates a large data set, which is utilized to support clinical trial matching, to inform new research, drive patient care improvements, and spark other innovations. Another example highlights the synergy between automation and human expertise. Automation and technology are increasingly leveraged to draw insights from the growing amounts of clinical data produced on a daily basis. One approach to this is the use of natural language processing, or NLP. NLP utilizes machine learning to more efficiently unlock meaningful information from large amounts of unstructured data housed in places like electronic health records and other sources. To do this, models must be created to train the technology to locate and interpret the data points of interest. As experts in the field of oncology data, CTRs and other clinical data experts are uniquely positioned to support this type of activity. A team of our oncology and clinical data specialists have been involved in the training of a partner's NLP technology over the last couple of years. Using their clinical knowledge and expertise to annotate and curate specified data elements within the partner's tool, they help to create, validate, and refine the NLP training models. These efforts aid our partner in providing high-quality data sets to their stakeholders to support a variety of studies and initiatives based on real-world data.
All right, thanks for sharing those exciting use cases. Appreciate it. One that resonates with me in particular is data automation, Jen, which you just covered. Over the past 5 years, we've worked with a number of innovative companies in the field of data automation. Additionally, as students of the market, we've also analyzed other areas within healthcare IT where automation is being utilized, from transcription to coding. I think that one thing that remains constant in all of these fields is that there's this symbiotic relationship between human expert and technology. They both benefit from one another, but they don't replace one another. And I know it sounds maybe a little paradoxical, but the point is that clinical talent expertise is necessary to help train the technology, as you mentioned. And the technology is critical to helping the clinical expert be more effective in their role. And so for me, it's an exciting field. It has lots of promise. I would just share that investments are still required in both areas, both in the technology as well as in the expert themselves. Okay, so moving right along, I'm obviously biased being in the field of healthcare IT. I'm really enthusiastic about the future and the impact of the innovations we've just discussed. Although I'm not a futurist and I don't commonly like making bold predictions, I do see the following realities. We are collecting massive amounts of clinical data. That data continues to grow at an astonishing rate. Companies like Q-Centrix are helping give that data structure and to ensure that it's high quality. And big data tools, they're expanding. And recently we witnessed the rapid creation, testing, and adoption of vaccines, leveraging many of these data advances. So my question to you, what's next? What is next in the future of oncology care, and how will data help fuel these advances?
Great question, Milton. And as you know, oncology is an ever-changing field. There's always new drugs, new treatment plans. Precision medicine is a big topic right now. And also there are always new innovations and new medical equipment. And so this requires us to constantly be looking at the data that we're collecting so that we are moving closer to a cure for cancer. This means that as an industry, we have to have the flexibility to collect information quickly and be able to pivot when new trends start to emerge. An example of this is the COVID-19 pandemic. Everyone remembers that we weren't visiting our physicians. We weren't going in for regular checkups. Let alone going in for annual cancer screenings. And so as an industry, we started thinking about what do we need to collect so that we can understand what COVID-19 has done for the cancer population. And so the data that we started collecting was whether or not a patient was COVID positive and if they had a treatment delay. And so as we look to the future, we started to see that these potential delays in treatment could potentially affect people's recurrence rates. In addition to that, we also started collecting information, and there will be, years and years of analysis of what COVID did in having people show up in more late stage cancers on their initial diagnosis. There will be, like I said, many studies that come out of this, but we have a feeling just based on what we're seeing that that is actually going to happen.
I agree with you, Karen. When we started this conversation, we also mentioned the Great Retirement, which is partially the result of baby boomers reaching the retirement age. Based on the most recent statistical data from SEER, the average age of a cancer diagnosis is 66 years old. With the baby boomer population reaching this age, the number of people diagnosed with cancer is predicted to grow in the coming years. With the development of newer diagnostic tools, treatments, and therapies, and the increased speed of development applied to this larger population, there will be more data than ever to leverage in order to gauge and improve overall treatment efficacy and to monitor how survival is impacted. Absolutely everyone involved in this industry plays an incredibly meaningful role in the broader efforts to drive earlier diagnosis, more effective treatments, and better overall outcomes for all individuals impacted by cancer.
Well stated. Karen, Jen, and all our audience participants, a sincere thank you for your engagement. We've covered a lot today, from exciting opportunities in this field for those that want to enter it as a profession, to the practitioners in the field that can better utilize and leverage their oncology data in decision-making and impact, to ultimately kind of the limitless and exciting opportunities that lie ahead. I think today's webinar titled appropriately captured our discussion, managing hospital oncology data from today's challenges to tomorrow's possibilities. So with that, let me hand it back to Christina to facilitate our Q&A session.
Thank you, Milton. I see a few questions have come in, but if you do have a question, you have something on your mind that you'd like to ask today's panelists, please send that into the Q&A button located in your participant controls. So I'm going to go a little bit out of order, but the first question, and maybe Milton, you can take this one. I'll read it out loud. Thank you for organizing this webinar. It has been very informative. My question is about data ownership. I fully agree that oncology data has tremendous benefit in multiple use cases, but wondering how you think about who actually owns the data and if that prevents possible use cases.
All right, thank you for the question, whomever submitted it. I think you hit on an important and evolving topic, this idea of data ownership. Frankly, we could spend the rest of the day just talking about this, both from a technical and philosophical perspective. In other words, there's no binary yes or no answer, but maybe let's start with a technical interpretation for a moment. As a general statement, I would offer patients own their data. Providers of healthcare services under HIPAA, and as a covered entity under HIPAA, they have certain rights to use that data in the delivery of care. Many providers state that right, the use right, specifically in the documentation when you and I sign and agree to receive healthcare services. So technically, you, patient, have provided use rights to that data. Similarly, a company like Q-Centrix, via its business associate agreement with the provider, we may also have certain use rights to that data, both HIPAA data as well as de-identified data. And it's under these use rights that we now look to utilize the data in a de-identified manner for the oncology use cases that we discussed today. So hopefully that provides a little bit more color on this question of data ownership and data use rights.
Thank you, Milton. All right, I'll move right along. This next question is, why hasn't data automation made a bigger impact in structuring this unstructured data? Karen, would you like to take that one?
Absolutely. And I think just to start out, the short answer is it's really hard. And I think that in order to understand the clinical data and how hard it is to have data automation, we have to appreciate that more than 60% of our clinical data is unstructured. Then appreciate that the data resides in multiple information systems. And then we have to realize that it's been entered in by multiple clinicians who don't necessarily speak the exact same clinical language. This is one reason that it's important to have the human look at everything together and capture it in a codified way. All of that messy data and trying to structure it with automation, again, becomes super hard. And at Q-Centrix, we've worked with some of the largest names in data automation to really try to unlock this data automation idea. Now, if you take a look at standard NLP engines and apply it to these data sets, it makes it even more complicated. We partnered with a leading technology company and are starting to build two models, one in oncology and one in cardiovascular. And once we have these models, we then need to fine tune and train the models to the specific use cases. And that's going to take time. Just one real-time example. I was speaking with someone who runs an oncology practice, and he shared that although every patient has to be staged, only 22% of the time is that data structured. That means 78% of the time that this is unstructured data in a physician note or a nurse's note, or even in a handwritten note that's scanned into a medical record. And that's just one data element. As we talk about the cancer registry, there's over 300 data elements that are collected on each patient. So you can imagine how tangled this web will be.
All right, thank you, Karen. Got a couple more for you all, and maybe a few of you can chime in on this one. But the next question is, how can the Cancer Registry support clinical trials?
It's a great question. I can take that one. I think that as we look at the Cancer Registry data, when we're collecting this information and it is very standardized, it will allow, when you mine that data, for physicians to understand their patient population and what clinical trials are possible to open up. And I think that's the biggest part of, it's step one in identifying what clinical trials you need to be offering in your community. And a lot of times we don't think about what the population looks like before we go out and say we want to do this clinical trial. So we think that the Cancer Registry can be a huge partner with the clinical research departments.
Awesome. Thank you, Karen. Looks like we have one final question, and maybe we can all chime in on this one. But the final question is, what advice would you give to someone interested in becoming a CTR?
I'll start with that one. I guess that I would say, first of all, it's an amazing profession to be in, especially if you're somebody who loves to learn, is interested in making sure that things are always new and unique, and also if you want to make a difference. So I think those key things are really important in somebody who is, interested in coming into this profession.
Jen, I couldn't agree more. One of the big qualities in this profession is that you really like to investigate, right? You have to be someone that is willing and wanting to search out those answers. And it's so interesting to me as we get to talk to our CTRs on a daily basis, how much they enjoy really tracking down this treatment data and understanding the patient journey. It's a really important component. And as we started, the webinar, we talked about how we came into this field. And when you start to hear how people are introduced into this, a lot of times they're drawn to this profession because their family has a history of cancer, and they're passionate about ensuring that their patients' stories are told. And so I think that's another component as to, why and what you would gain out of joining this profession.
And maybe just one comment, Christina. Many of you probably saw that the president was in Boston talking about moonshot. And I keep thinking about both, if you're interested in this profession and if you're a practitioner, we're just on the precipice, right? It goes back to kind of my earlier comments on the data that we now have, how we're able to leverage it, and how you, both practitioner and maybe student interested in this market, can have such a profound impact on the future of where cancer care is going. So I asked the question. I think it's an exciting time to enter this field, and thank you to everybody who plays a role in helping us advance it. We're just at the start of this thing, I believe.
Right. Thank you, Milton. Thank you, Karen and Jen. Those are all of the questions I've received. So that concludes our webinar, The Current State of Managing Hospital Oncology Data from Today's Challenges to Tomorrow's Possibilities. Thank you all for joining us and for sharing your expertise on how clinical data is playing a role in advancing the market and improving patient care. If you have any more questions, feel free to send them to qc_events@q-centrix.com, and we'll be sure to respond as soon as possible. A recording of this webinar will be sent to all registrants within the next week. And finally, as you exit this webinar, you should see a link to a survey pop up in your browser, or you can just click on the link that should now be available in the chat. Either way works, but we encourage you to complete this to let us know if you found this discussion of value. Thank you so much and have a great rest of your day.